So when you think Dominican Republic, right, you probably picture beaches, sun, great music.
Absolutely. The whole vibe. It's incredibly alluring.
Exactly. But underneath all that beauty, there's this, well, complex layer of laws. It's not always straightforward.
No, it really isn't. And that's crucial for anyone looking at the DR in 2025, maybe as a tourist, maybe thinking about business, or even making it home. You've got to get a handle on the legal side.
Which is exactly what we're digging into today. We've gone through the legal texts, looked at reports, even personal stories like this entrepreneur, Maria.
Right, trying to pull out the really key stuff.
Yeah, the goal here is simple. Give you a clearer path through the big topics, beach access, importing goods, and the whole residency thing. Consider this your shortcut to getting informed.
And starting with beach access, well, it's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? This Caribbean paradise where getting onto the sand can be tricky.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. So, on paper, the Constitution, Law 6400, they say beaches are public domain.
Correct. Fundamentally, everyone should have access. That's the baseline.
That's always a but.
There is.
Yeah.
It's Law 97544. This one deals with private property rights.
Law.
And it allows landowners, often resorts sitting right on the coast, to restrict access across their land.
Even if that land is the only practical way to get to the public beach.
Precisely. So you have this built-in tension, public rights versus private interest controlling the access points.
And that private control isn't insignificant, is it?
Not at all. We saw a tourism ministry report from 2023 estimating something like 60% of the prime beachfront is effectively controlled by private entities.
60%, wow. That really puts stories like Maria's into perspective.
It does. She wanted to open a little cafe, a local spot, right on Playa Encuentro. Seemed perfect.
But the resort next door
Claimed exclusive access. She spent a year battling bureaucracy permits, environmental assessments, municipal approvals, all while the resort, wielded its influence.
That sounds incredibly frustrating. Where did this whole system even come from? It seems counterintuitive for a tourist destination.
Well, you have to look back historically. It starts with colonial land grants, huge tracts of land given out.
Okay.
Then, in the 20th century, as tourism boomed, the government focused on attracting big developers. They offered major concessions.
And public access wasn't always top of mind in those deals, I imagine.
It seems not. The priority was often large-scale development, sometimes overlooking the impact on local access.
So is anything being done to sort of rebalance this?
There are efforts. There were proposed amendments in 2024 to Law 640,
What did they aim to do?
mandate public access points every 500 meters along developed coasts. Sounds good in theory.
But the implementation?
It's been patchy. Enforcement is tricky, especially where powerful resorts dominate the coastline.
So for someone just visiting, what's the practical takeaway? How do you find a beach you could actually get to?
Research is key. Some beaches are known for being reliably public. Playa Sosua, Playa Macau, places like that.
And for locals?
They can petition local authorities, but it can be a slow process. There are also advocacy groups, like the Dominican Coastal Access Network, pushing for change.
Okay, that's helpful. Let's shift focus now to bringing things into the country, importing goods. The DR imports a lot, right?
It does. It's very reliant on imports. But yeah, the regulations can be quite strict, quite complex to navigate.
What are the main laws we need to know about here?
You're primarily looking at the customs law, that's Law 3489, and the tax code, Law 1192. It's all overseen by the DGA, the Customs Authority.
And it involves taxes, presumably quite a few?
Oh, yes. Multiple layers. You've got tariffs, first off.
How high do those go?
They can range from 3% up to 35%, sometimes capped at 40% under WTO rules.
Yeah.
Then there's ITBIS.
Like QBAS?
Yeah, basically their VAT, value-added tax. It's 18% on most goods and services.
Okay, tariffs, ITBIS, anything else?
For certain things, yes. Luxury items, think alcohol, tobacco, get hit with a selective consumption tax. That can be anywhere from 15% to a hefty 60%.
Wow, so the total tax burden can add up quickly.
It definitely can. And on top of taxes, some goods need specific import licenses.
Like what?
Pharmaceuticals, agrochemicals, things like that. They require approval from specific ministries, which adds another step.
Now, the DRR is part of CAFTA-DR, the trade agreement with the U.S. and Central America. Does that help?
It can, yes. Goods coming from the U.S. might qualify for lower preferential tariff rates under CAFTA-DR.
Then qualify.
You need the right paperwork. Proper certification of origin is crucial to prove the goods were made in the U.S. Without it, you don't get the benefit.
Right, documentation. What about personal stuff? If someone's moving there, can they bring their household goods tax-free?
Yes, there's a provision for that. If you get residency, you have about 6 months, 182 days from getting your card to import your personal household items tax-free.
Like furniture, clothes.
Exactly. But vehicles are usually a different story. They're typically taxed based on value, age, and model, though some specific residency programs might offer partial breaks.
It sounds like the whole import process could get bogged down in paperwork and bureaucracy.
That's a common experience, unfortunately. You need meticulous documentation invoices, packing lists, certificates, maybe sanitary permits, depending on the goods.
And the systems themselves?
Well, there's a computerized customs system, but it's known to have glitches sometimes. And the ports, like Puerto Casedo, can get congested. You might wait 5, maybe 10 days just for clearance.
You mentioned Juan, a retailer in Santiago. Tell us about his experience.
Right, Juan. He was importing solar panels from the U.S. Good idea, environmentally friendly, should qualify under CAFTA-DIR.
Should have been straightforward.
You'd think.
Yeah.
But even with potential tariff breaks, he still faced about a 25% effective tax rate once ITBIS and various fees were added.
Okay.
And then his shipment got stuck for 3 weeks.
Why?
A missing phytosanitary certificate. Something about plant health regulations, probably related to wooden packaging or something. It cost him $2,000 in penalties, plus the delay hitting his business.
Ouch. That shows how one missing document can derail things. Why are the import rules so strict historically?
It's partly protectionism shielding local industries and partly revenue generation for the government. Back in the 60s, the focus was heavily on import substitution, trying to build domestic production.
But that changed a bit with globalization.
Yes, in the 90s, things started opening up, joining the WTO, signing agreements like CAFTA-DIR. But there's still a lingering protectionist streak, especially for agriculture.
So, practical advice for importers in 2025, for individuals.
And if you're moving, use that tax-free window for personal items wisely. Stay within the allowances.
And for businesses.
Definitely understand CAFTA-DIR if you're sourcing from the U.S. Get that paperwork right. Hiring a good local customs broker is almost essential. They know the system.
Worth the investment, probably.
Often, yes, they can navigate the complexities, potentially avoid costly mistakes, and maybe look into compliance software. The DGA also launched an online tracking portal in 2024, but, well, adoption and effectiveness are still evolving.
Okay, let's move on to the third big area. Residency and eventually citizenship. This is a huge draw for many people, right? The lifestyle.
Absolutely. The DR is very appealing. But getting legal residency, let alone citizenship, is a serious process. It's rigorous, takes time, and requires patience.
What are the main laws governing this?
The General Immigration Act is the big one, along with Law 17107, which deals more with specific incentives for investors and retirees.
So, if you're not just coming for a short holiday, what's the first step?
Well, tourists usually get that tourist card. It's often baked into your flight cost now, good for 30 days. Anything longer, you need to start thinking about a residency visa.
A residency visa applied for before you move?
Generally, yes, from your home country. That's the gateway to applying for temporary residency once you're in the DR.
And what does temporary residency involve? What do you need?
You need to show you can support yourself financially without needing local employment, unless you have a specific work permit. You need a clean criminal record check from back home.
Okay.
And a medical exam done in the Dominican Republic showing you're in good health. Plus, lots of supporting documents, often needing official translations and notarizations.
How long does that usually take?
The processing time for temporary residency can vary, but you're typically looking at, say, 3 to 6 months.
And then you move from temporary to permanent?
Usually, yes.
Okay.
After 1 year of holding temporary residency, you can apply for permanent.
Are there faster routes to permanent residency?
Yes, there are. If you make a significant investment, the minimum is usually around $200,000 US.
Okay, the investor route.
Or if you're a retiree with a guaranteed monthly pension of at least $1,500 US.
Yeah.
Or if you have close family ties, like being married to a Dominican citizen or permanent resident.
And permanent residency, is it truly permanent?
You have to renew it first after 1 year, and then it's typically every 4 years after that. It grants more rights than temporary, like fewer work restrictions, but it's still not citizenship.
Right. So what about citizenship? How does that work?
To apply for citizenship through naturalization, you usually need to have been a permanent resident for at least 2 years.
Oh.
You need to prove you speak Spanish well. There's an exam. You also need to show you understand Dominican culture, history, civics. usually through an interview.
Sounds a bit subjective.
It can be. And you still need to meet financial requirements. The whole citizenship process can take up to 10 months, sometimes longer.
You mentioned Law 17107 earlier, the residency by investment program. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. That law created a specific fast track. If you qualify as an investor, that $200K minimum, or a retiree, $1,500 a month pension, you can potentially get permanent residency much quicker.
Much quicker.
Maybe 45 to 90 days. It's designed specifically to attract foreign capital and retirees.
And does the DR allow dual citizenship? Can you keep your original passport?
Yes, it does recognize dual citizenship. That's a big plus for many people.
Okay, so there are pathways, but it sounds like hurdles remain. What are the common sticking points?
Documents, documents, documents. It's incredibly paper-intensive, getting everything notarized, translated, authenticated. It's a lot.
And the bureaucracy.
Yeah, bureaucratic slowdowns are common. Agencies can be inefficient. Rules sometimes seem inconsistently applied. It requires persistence.
Like Maria, our entrepreneur again, she had issues here too.
She did. She applied for permanent residency, partly to help with importing business equipment tax-free.
Yeah.
Met the criteria, but got stuck in a backlog at the migration office, the DGM. Waited 8 months.
8 months, just waiting.
Exactly. And citizenship, as we touched on, has its own complexities, especially historically.
Right, particularly regarding people of Haitian descent. That's been very controversial.
Extremely. The 2010 constitutional change and the 2013 court ruling effectively redefined who qualified for birthright citizenship, retroactively stripping it from thousands, mostly of Haitian descent.
Creating statelessness.
Yes, a huge human rights issue that drew international condemnation. Law 169/14 was meant to fix it, provide a path back to recognize status or citizenship, but
Implementation has been slow.
very slow. As of 2024, relatively few people affected had actually completed the naturalization process under that law. It's a deeply complex legacy.
And this ties back to the historical relationship with Haiti.
Absolutely. The immigration and citizenship laws have always been heavily influenced by the dynamics on the island of Hispaniola. Before 2010, it was more just Sali, born here, citizen here.
Right, birthright citizenship.
But the changes redefined the in-transit clause for parents, impacting those born to undocumented Haitian migrants, even if the families had lived in the DR for generations. It's rooted in very deep historical and political context.
So, bottom line advice for someone wanting to pursue residency or citizenship in 2025.
First, get a good local lawyer who specializes in immigration. Seriously. It's complex. You need expert guidance.
Makes sense.
Second, if you qualify, that residency by investment program is often the smoothest, fastest route to permanent status.
Okay.
Third, stay informed. Check the official DGM website regularly for updates, rule changes. Information is power here.
Good tip. Any other advice?
For U.S. citizens enrolling in the STEP program, Smart Traveler Enrollment Program is always wise. And keep an eye on those government digital reforms President Abinader is pushing. Online portals could eventually streamline things.
It really underscores how understanding the history is vital to navigating the present, doesn't it? Can we zoom out for a moment on the legal system's history overall?
Yeah, definitely. The Dominican legal system is really this blend, this tapestry woven from different threads.
Spanish colonial law being the foundation.
Right. Centuries of Spanish rule left a huge mark. Then a brief period of French rule brought elements of the French civil law tradition, the Napoleonic Code.
And after independence in 1844.
They started building their own framework, but heavily influenced by those European systems. The 1844 Constitution emphasized property rights, national sovereignty key themes, still relevant today.
So core laws like the Civil Code still show that French influence.
Very much so. The Civil Code, covering contracts, property, family law, is based on the Napoleonic Code. The Commercial Code from 1882 also reflects that heritage.
But it's evolved since then, obviously.
Modern laws get added, like the Consumer Protection Law in 2005. There have been judicial reforms, attempts to modernize things like Social Security with Law 8701 back in the early 2000s.
But challenges remain.
Yes, efficiency in the judicial system is still often cited as a persistent challenge, despite the reforms.
And those economic policies import tariffs, tourism concessions they link back to?
Absolutely. They reflect post-independence strategies to build the economy, protect local interests, and later capitalize on tourism.
So the specific issues we've discussed, beach access, imports, residency, they're all tangled up in this broader historical context of balancing national identity, economic growth, and global integration.
Exactly. And tourism has often been the heavyweight on the scales, influencing policy decisions across the board.
It sounds complex, maybe even a bit daunting. Is there a silver lining? Are things improving?
I think so, yes. There are positive signs. The current Abinader administration seems genuinely focused on attracting foreign investment and making it easier to do business.
What kind of tangible changes are we seeing?
Well, those 2024 reforms aiming to streamline business registration and speed up customs clearance for imports, those are potentially significant steps.
And the move towards digital services.
Right, the e-ticket system for travelers, more online tax portals. It shows a push towards efficiency, even if adoption takes time.
And tourism itself, despite the access issues, is still huge for the economy.
Massive. It's about 16% of GDP. That economic weight creates its own pressure for infrastructure improvements, which could eventually lead to better public beach access, for example.
And Maria, our entrepreneur, does she make it?
She did. Her little beachside cafe serving sancocho is open. It took resilience, but she got there.
That's great to hear. A success story.
And there are other positive developments. New incentives for businesses in tourism zones, clearer residency paths for expats, growing investment in places like Puerto Plata.
So wrapping this up, what's the main takeaway for someone navigating Dominican law in 2025?
It's complex, yes, but understandable. It reflects a country juggling growth and tradition. The key is preparation. Do your homework.
Get local help.
Absolutely. Good legal advice, reliable brokers, invaluable. And approach it with patience and an open mind. Understand the context.
Maria's story really drives that home persistence, understanding the landscape. Whether you're dreaming of retirement there or building a business, knowing the rules is step one.
It really is.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? This balancing act, economic development versus public access, individual rights versus national rules. Is that just a Dominican thing, or is it something every country grapples with in its own way?
That's a really interesting question to ponder. It feels pretty universal, I think.
Definitely food for thought. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Dominican Republic.